housing prices. But the real story is that none of this is shocking if you've been watching this program. Please wake up, America. Believe it or not, the only topic that we cover that gets more hate mail than radical Islam is the threats facing our economy. Yeah, apparently people just don't like to hear that their homes may be worth a lot less than they think they are, and they may never get to retire. I know, sounds crazy. Unfortunately, since people don't like the message, they tend to ignore it. That is human nature. It is also dangerous. Whenever we talk about the worst-case scenario with the economy, the words of my grandfather always run through my head, and man, they have been going crazy. In my head, that's all I'm hearing lately. He would always tell me the only people that survived the Great Depression were those who had money to spend when everyone else was broke. Those who saved while everyone else spent like crazy. If that does not sound like you, then please walk down the doomsday road with me for just a couple of minutes and consider whether or not you're positioned to make it through another depression. You may not like the message, and the message may be wrong. But is there harm into listening to it, at least for a couple of minutes? Peter Schiff is the president of Euro-Pacific Capital and author of Crash Proof. Also, Michael Panzer, he's a Wall Street trader and author of Financial Armageddon. You two are doomsday. I mean, you make my head hurt, honestly. You give me nightmares. But while I may not agree with everything that each of you say, you both, I think, are closer than the clowns that we see on TV all the time saying, oh, no, we're totally fine. Let me start with this. The housing market. Greenspan is saying that there's at least single-digit losses. He may see double digits. And, Peter, you say it's going to be worse than that.
Oh, sure.
Why?
Well, you know, housing prices were only bid up to these bubble levels because of the monetary policies of Alan Greenspan. He brought short-term interest rates down to 1%, left them there for years, and then raised them very slowly. And that's what created the fuel that fed that fire. And it allowed so many speculators and so many people to borrow huge sums of money to overpay for houses that they couldn't afford.
All right, Michael, so what we have in Florida is we have 23,000 condos that are currently sitting on the market. Next year, over the next 2 years, we'll have another 25,000 condos that are being built right now that are coming on the market. And then another 48,000 have some kind of money in it. We're talking an enormous amount of condos. Here's the problem, and this is, as I understand it, this is why we kind of had a run on the banks in London. You have to have this money. They've taken all of this money. They can't get any more financing. There's no transactions going on in some of the real estate markets, at least right now in real estate markets in Florida. So that those housing prices drop dramatically because the bank has to say, this is what the market is worth, and if only one sells, but it sells for 50% less, they're all 50% less. Is that true?
Well, that's the thing about all markets. It's really the sale at the margin that matters. You live on a street where one person sells their house at a fire sale price. It affects everybody's houses. It worked very well on the way up, but on the way down, it really does have a tremendous impact, and it also feeds through the psychology. It affects buyers' attitudes as well as sellers' attitudes, and frankly, I don't think we've seen anything yet. I agree with Peter.
Okay. Peter, the one thing that you talk about in your book is that the dollar is going to be worthless, and I will tell you that I've talked to people who are bulls. You guys are both bears. I've talked to bulls, and they are extremely concerned that we've only got a few levers and knobs to do again and to pull, and if we start to cascade down, we might open some valves if we're hit by a terrorist attack or something like that. The government will not let these banks fail. Things won't fail, so they'll just start printing money.
Well, you know, we don't need a terrorist attack. You know, I don't think the dollar is going to be worthless. I just think it'll be worth a lot less than it is now.
No, but
you ask about
your scenario is not a 25% cut in the dollar's value. You're talking about massive inflation.
I think the best case scenario is the dollar only loses half its value. The worst case is much worse. I mean, the worst case would be hyperinflation that was inspired by a government effort to postpone the recession. The best case scenario is that we have the recession sooner rather than later. And it's going to be a very severe recession. Housing prices are going to collapse. But consumer prices, what we pay for what we consume, those prices are going to go up dramatically. During the recession.
Have either of you guys read The Forgotten Man? by Amity, I think it's Amity Shales. It's a tremendous book, and she talks about the real causes of the Depression. And Peter, it's pretty much what you were saying. Michael, I'd love to hear your comments on this. That the Depression, the reason why it was as bad as it was, is because the government got in there and screwed around with it.
Of course. I mean, the government created the conditions. First, the Federal Reserve blew up the bubble. They were too easy with monetary policy. They created too many dollars. They created the speculative mania of the 1920s. When the bubble burst, both Hoover and Roosevelt came in and compounded the situation by, forcing employers, not allowing employers to reduce wages, by destroying food, by trying to artificially keep food prices higher. They created the Depression. It didn't have to be that bad.
Michael, does this, what really scares me is I really think Hillary, and the way she's talking about being a new modern-day progressive as progressives of the early 20th century, which was Roosevelt, and the New Deal, I think these people are positioning themselves as to bring the New Deal, which would be devastating, would it not?
I think we're already hearing talk of that from the Democrats in Congress. I think there's this whole idea that somehow they can take 20 years or more or longer of bad behavior and somehow add more bad behavior and come up with something good. Two wrongs don't make a right.
So I saw Warren Buffett took his money, a lot of his money, and he bought euros, and I think he bought gold. He's become very, very conservative. He's talking, I mean, he's not talking like you guys, but he's on the same road as you guys, and we're in big, big trouble. We're going to pay for all of our sins of the past. What exactly do you do? I mean, I'm not Warren Buffett. What do you do with your money? And the average person.
Well, even Alan Greenspan in that 60 Interviews interview the other day said that he was recommending that people keep their savings in currencies other than the dollar. I mean, he can see the writing on the wall. After all, he wrote it. So what average Americans can do is do what I've been advising my clients to do at Euro Pacific Capital, what I talk about in my book: get rid of your dollars. In a depression,
but you know what? It's easy to say, Peter. It's easy to say, but Michael,
but it's easy to do. It's not hard.
I have to interject here. I have a slightly different perspective on this than Peter. I take the view that I agree with him. Longer term, the dollar is heading lower, but there's a number of reasons why, in fact, we could actually see the surprising dollar rally, the kind of thing that people hadn't been looking for, a black swan type of event, to use that sort of name. But part of it is the unwinding credit bubble. There'll be a demand for currency. People will find a need around the globe to draw in dollars so they can repay the loans that are being called in by their bankers. There's a tremendous speculative position against the dollar, and I think in the very short run, the next 2 to 3 years, we could see a dollar rally.
Guys, hang on.
There's a much bigger speculative position in the dollar.
I've got to ask you this question. What you guys are talking about is really scary stuff. The terrorist Osama bin Laden wants to stop our economy, wants to kill us through our economy. Do you believe that if we had a major spike in war or oil, with all of the stuff that you're talking about, do you believe this is a knockout punch possibly for the United States?
Look, they don't need to kill us. We've already committed suicide. We borrowed trillions of dollars from the rest of the world.
Don't answer this clearly, Peter. Do you believe this is a possible knockout punch for the economy of the United States of America?
The economy of the United States of America is a house of cards, and it's about to collapse.
Michael, do you feel that?
I agree. I think it could be any catalyst. I mean, certainly it could be a terrorist event, but I think we're so vulnerable now that, in fact, it could be something you completely don't expect.
Okay, guys, thanks a lot. I've got to sleep well tonight. Not enough Valium on the planet. If you'd like to hear more from Peter Schiff in particular, please go to glennbeck.com right now. Subscribe to my magazine, Fusion. Peter has written a great and frightening article for us on the worst-case scenario for our economy. If you want to prepare for the worst, it is a must-read. You're also going to get tremendous articles from other people that you've seen on the TV show or heard on the radio show, Insight in Fusion magazine, and it is available only at glennbeck.com or calling 888-GLENN-BECK. But you got to hurry. Deadline for getting this issue is tomorrow, and your dollars may be no good by tomorrow, so you better do it now. And we will not take payments in gold yet. Coming up, country music star Travis Tritt joins me in the studio. Don't go anywhere.